There are some folks that just love axes, hammers, anvils, diesel trucks, carburetors. They like kind of simple tech that's robust, that they can get their hands around, that they can understand, and something that they can rely on in any situation. And what you're looking at right here is the rifle scope equivalent of that. These are the SWFA SS scopes, which have a long history, a long track record of being extremely tough and extremely precise at the same time. This is something that you don't have to baby, and it's still going to work, and it's going to work really, really well. We have a couple models here, and the first one I want to take a look at is this. This is the SWFA SS 12x42. And you heard me right, this isn't a 2 to 12x42 or anything like that. This is a 12x42. This is a fixed power scope. What you see back here is not a zoom ring, this is actually a parallax adjustment. So there's no parallax adjustment here, there's no adjustable objective out on this end. In order to get your correct parallax, it's this right back here, which by the way feels really good. This is actually very smooth. This is built around a simple 30mm tube. I'm sure it's a very tough one because of the reputation of this. A lot of people just talk about these as, essentially being hammers that you can put on top of your rifle. So if you're the kind of guy that you don't necessarily baby things, you kind of chuck things on your quad to go out and, deal with the ranch during the day, this is going to be the kind of scope that you really like. But yeah, 30mm tube, and you will be blown away by this. These turrets, with this 30mm tube scope, because of the reduced complexity inside here, without having to have a cam tube for the zoom and all that, this has a whopping 40 mils of travel up, down, left, right. And it's not just 40 random clicks, this is 40 real mils, and these track wonderfully. This has a great reputation over the years, and I can bear this out in my own testing. I have tested this on my own box test to see how this tracks along. It works great, and because of the total travel that you get in this is a scope that you can use from distances, probably from 200 yards because of its fixed magnification of 12x. You don't want to probably get a whole lot closer than that with a centerfire rifle anyway. But maybe 100 yards, somewhere in there. But you can take this out to, no joke, a mile. I was able to dial this scope with a 20 MOA base on it, 6.5 Creedmoor, and in this test video, we were nailing a steel target a mile away, 1,760 yards away, and it was all with dialing. I didn't even have to use any of the reticle. This thing is a freak, and it works. This was dialing every bit, just tracking along perfectly, along with scopes that cost $2,200 bucks, $1,200 bucks. We had a $700 one as well. They all actually tracked perfectly, but the fact that this $300 scope kept up with them is just mind-boggling. Now, how can this have such a good reputation for its toughness and for its tracking? Well, one thing is, this $300 scope is made in Japan. That begins to explain some things. It explains why the parallax adjustment feels just wonderful. Perfectly smooth, no hitches, and this will actually parallax adjust all the way down to 10 meters. So you could potentially put this on a rimfire rifle. Remember, this is 12x, so think about your targets. But I should point out that you get a variety of these different scopes. You can get a fixed 6x, there's a 10x, 12x, and is there a 16? But I know there's a 20. But they have a variety of these, and you can pick what magnification you want to stick to. Now, it's not going to be the most flexible scope because of that. You're not going to be able to see, like if you suddenly get a bunch of hogs that come up close to you, you can't zoom out to be able to see more of them. And if you see a target that's really, really, really far away and it's small, like maybe a woodchuck or something, you're not going to be able to zoom in to see it a little bit more closely. But despite that, it just kind of works. The reticle in here, this is second focal plane, as if it matters, but it is second focal plane, and it is a mil quad reticle. So it's a lot like a mil dot or a mil hash. It has a little bit of extra data, so it has some intermediate lines, and it has these diamonds that you can put your target inside of, or you can use them to make different measurements. Actually, the reticle is a pretty trick one, and I like it a lot. You guys that are not fans of Christmas tree reticles, you're gonna like this. It keeps everything nice and open, but it does allow you to make those quick DMR type shots where you can hold off and hold over without having to mess with the turrets. So let's talk about some of the other kind of features and functions on here. I should point out that these turrets, these are 5 milliradians of spin all the way around, so it's not 10. And that's going to help you be able to see where things are. But let's take a listen to them. Yeah, you probably can't even really hear those over the cicadas. But yeah, they don't make much sound. They're not particularly crisp feeling. They're a little bit mushy from point to point. But actually, I guess they do lock in pretty well once you get to one of your spots. There's not much to feel with gloves, so you're gonna have to keep an eye on this. Use your eyes to be able to see where you've dialed. It doesn't have much of a feel to it. You can see that the turrets are quite tall. These will snag on things. Oh well. Moving further back, we have the eyepiece. This is a fast focus type eyepiece, and this is one that does not spin easily. Love that. That means that once you get your perfect diopter adjustment, it's not going to be easy to accidentally lose it and spin off it out in the field, like it brushing against clothes, coming out of a bag, that sort of thing. This is something I talk about in a bunch of my reviews. I like it when these are relatively firm, and this one is. All right, let's get into some stats here. This is a 20-ounce scope. It actually doesn't weigh all that much. You can definitely get into scopes that have more features and weigh less, but considering the reputation of this, I think that 20 ounces is probably pretty fair. Eye relief on this end is 3.4 inches. That's not bad. It's a bit close. So if you're shooting a Magnum, just make sure that you are, holding it correctly. 3.4 is actually okay. You don't have to be super careful about that. But some of the scopes that I've gotten into have had up to 4 inches, and this is just a little bit closer. Now, when it does come to some of those difficult circumstances, like high recoiling rifles, that's one of the places where both of these scopes come alive. These are very well touted as being able to handle anything. You can just strap one of these on top of your cannon or whatever, and it's probably going to be able to handle it. Everything up through 338 Lapua Magnum, 50 BMG, those big magnums, you can drop this on there and it's going to work. And that's not the only difficult situation that it can handle. These are waterproof, and they should be able to handle quite a bit of water. They claim that you can put this underwater 15 feet down, and that's pretty nuts. I haven't heard anybody make that kind of claim before. I don't know, should we throw this in the drink? See what happens? So that's total waterproofing on that. You do have fully multi-coated lenses, which is going to aid the image. It's going to help to reduce a lot of internal reflections and things. And this is one that should be able to deal with fog and water pretty well. Water should just kind of beat up and roll off, and fog should disappear from this pretty well. If you get into a situation where it's cold and you kind of breathe on the lenses, it should dissipate really quickly. One thing that I should point out, okay, this is about 14.5 inches long without the sunshade, and the sunshade is extra. You're gonna have to buy this separately on SWFA. And I'll put links to these if you wanna check these out. This is how it's been for a long time. We've had the fixed power scopes for a good long time, and it's actually been a while that they've had the zoom ones as well. So this has variable magnification, and this model, which I can feel weighs a good bit more, will go from 3x up to 15. So instead of the parallax adjustment at the back, this actually is a zoom function here. Now this one is a little bit firmer to turn. I think I would prefer it just slightly easier to turn so that it doesn't mess with the scope as I'm turning it, but nah, it's fine. Parallax adjustment on the side now, since we've taken that spot away. And this is quite firm. It's loosening up a little bit. It's been a little bit since I've used this scope, so it's a little bit frozen, I guess. But yeah, this is quite firm to turn. Again, more than I usually like. But for a scope that's built to kind of handle anything, all right, I can deal with that. We get the same wonderful tracking vertically and horizontally, but because this is more complicated on the inside with that 30mm tube, this one actually gets 36 mils of elevation and windage adjustment. So you take it down a little bit, but 36 is still mad. That is still a whole lot. This still has a 42mm objective. And one of the things that I'd like to point out about this is that yes, for the price, $300, ultimate reliability, the image is pretty decent. It's okay. things that are out of focus are going to get some of that axial chromatic aberration, so it's going to start to get some, purple or green fringing, things that are out of focus. When it's in focus, it's still going to have a little bit, but it's not too bad. It actually looks pretty good as long as you get your eye in the right spot. It doesn't have ultimate, resolution and sharpness and contrast. The image overall is good, and you can see mirage, but, don't believe the hype from anybody that these are going to be competing image quality wise with some of those $2,200 scopes or whatever. It's fine, but it's not up there with some of the more expensive scopes that we used in the other test. Like with the Bushnell XRS2, we were able to see on our target, we were able to see our spray painted dot. And that was at every, bit of its extension. So, we actually had it adjusted out to its maximum. And the guy that was shooting with that scope said that he could still see the black dot on it. This one, even in the center of the image, we couldn't see the black dot. So yeah, it's not going to do that. One other thing about both of these is that the image is going to drop off more quickly at dusk than it will with others, just because of the size of that objective lens. It's just a small lens, 42 millimeters. It doesn't get a whole lot of light back to the eyeball. It doesn't get you that big exit pupil. And so yeah, it's not going to function as you get much past dusk. It really starts to fall apart. One thing that I would like to point out about the variable zoom model, which costs actually more than double. This is a $700 scope that you see right here. This has an image quality that keeps up with this one and doesn't seem to fall off even at 15x. It doesn't seem to drop off any extra light. They seem to perform the same, which is actually pretty cool. Considering that this has less going on, I would think it would be brighter as we get to dusk. But no, actually they seem to perform exactly the same. That's it, guys. A simple scope review for very simple scopes, but ones that work very robustly. These are ones that I would count on in any situation. The fact that this was able to get on target at a mile, especially at its price point, it just kind of blows my mind. And yeah, both of these in the test that I put them through have performed extremely well. Actually, this one, the 3 to 15, this is one that I zeroed at 400 yards. I had to take it out for kind of it's the only commercial I've ever shot, but I had to throw together a rifle really quickly and get a scope on top, so I slapped this up there, and I actually zeroed my rifle at 400 yards because I just didn't have time to go down range, and it just worked perfectly. I just kept nailing the target every time. Yeah, both of these are beasts, and I think you should give them a good look. Those of you guys that have used these over the years, we've had just decades and decades of use of these scopes, so please put comments down below. Let folks know what you think of them, maybe some of the stories that you have, different hunts that you've been on or uses that you've had for these. I'm really curious to hear from you guys. Thanks a lot. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe. Even if you didn't like this particular content, go ahead and subscribe. There's probably something coming that's more up your alley. Check out this playlist right here. This is going to have videos in a similar vein to what you just watched. These two videos we cherry-picked for you. And finally, The Social Regressive is on Patreon. So you can become a patron of the Destructive Arts and earn some goodies while helping us to provide high-quality videos just by kicking us a few bucks a month. Thanks a bunch for your patronage.